The Economist and Financial Times are literally behaving like Hasanabi has right now. Look at this. Look at this. Look at The Economist. This is a straight up community meme, dude. This is a community meme, and it is now the newspaper of Western capitalists reflecting on a community meme from our community. It's just like, I've never seen so much unbelievable vindication in such a short period of time. But yeah, on the one hand, Donald Trump is saying he is going to de-escalate. On the other hand, he's saying that there's a high-risk plan to seize the Iranian uranium. But our allies are also pulling out. Our allies are also taking a strong stance against the United States of America in this incursion, because not only is it indefensible, but it's also devastating. It's quite consequential for the global markets. And England doesn't want to participate in it. Even Germany is shy, right? This is like, Five Eyes is a core part of American and Western imperialism. When you got Australia and the UK coming out and saying, this is not for us, that's a huge deal. That's even, in my opinion, that's a more consequential statement than even NATO, right? It's a big deal. Mark Dubowitz from FDD, one of the beggars of permanent war with Iran, comes out and says, Five Eyes was built for another era. We get diminishing value from our partners, and ties with Britain are at a low point. Time to rethink the alliance around those actually delivering intelligence value. Israel, Poland, Ukraine, UAE, Japan, Republic of Korea, and other serious partners. Of course, you would say that you are literally an agent for the state of Israel. Remember, FDD, Foundation for Defending Democracy, is basically an Israeli think tank. It is literally an Israeli think tank. You could even go so far as to say it's a Likudnik think tank. It is Benjamin Netanyahu's personal think tank in Washington, D.C., and that's precisely the reason why they're saying this. Oh, Five Eyes. What you should care about is the United Arab Emirates and Israel, right? Get the out of here. Oops, hold on. I'm going to go back to that because there was a Sina Tusi take here as well. Sina Tusi says, for decades, a core project of the Israel lobby and the rise of neocons was to cast Israel as a strategic asset to the U.S. global hegemony, especially from the 60s and 70s onward, as many of its leading figures made that ideological turn. That logic helped embed Israel within the broader U.S.-led alliance system. What is striking now is that as Israeli actions are increasingly acknowledged as a strategic liability for the United States, leading pro-Israel voices in Washington like Mark Dubowitz are questioning the very alliances that actually underpin American power. To discerning observers, the through line is hard to miss, a consistent push to direct U.S. power in ways that align with Israel, even when they run against any rational definition of U.S. national interests. Israel is like an abusive boyfriend, for those of you who don't understand, okay? Or an abusive girlfriend, an abusive partner that like constantly gets you into fights, has no ability to defend you when those fights happen, okay? Uses you as a meat shield, and is also trying to forcibly separate you from your friends and family so that you are increasingly singularly reliant on your abusive partner. That is literally what's going on here. This is what it is. Straight up. Arrogant, temperamental, hysterical, entitled, narcissistic. That's precisely what this is. A fascist country that is increasingly at odds with American State Department goals, but is able to manipulate and utilize the American government and all of its power to advance its own personal ambitions, even if it goes against long-standing security cooperative agreements. That's precisely what's happening here. Because at the end of the day, what is more valuable to America? Trillions of dollars of investment coming from the Gulf that is the underpinning of the petrodollar system that we have, or a nation-state the size of New Jersey that constantly destroys every one of its neighboring countries and demands unlimited billions of dollars of defense. What's a more valuable asset, you think? Now, I'm not in favor of American imperialism. Having said that, however, if I was a competent State Department official, I would look to this dynamic and say, we have to cut Israel out of this equation. We have to bring Israel to heel, because at this point, it's absolutely harming our interests. It is diametrically opposite to our interests. I wouldn't say this about previous military incursions in the way that, like, Joe Kent or Tucker Carlson does, where they shift the blame over to Israel. Israel's the reason why we invaded Iraq. That's not true. We did not invade Iraq because of Israel. Did Benjamin Netanyahu play a role in the invasion of Iraq? Absolutely. Was he playing an advisory role? Yeah, of course he was. He came to the United States of America, delivered speech after speech to Congress about why this was good. Maybe he gave a 10 to 25% push, right? But our ambitions were ours when it came to extracting the natural resources of Iraq. However, this time it's different. It wasn't 40%. You're wrong. This time it's different. This is a spectacular mistake for those who want to continue American empire, allowing Israel to basically infiltrate the highest levels of decision-making in this country with its helpers. I forget what the proper term for it is, but it's helpers like Jared Kushner and Witkoff, people who are sympathetic, people who aren't directly paid by the Israeli government, but like sympathetic to that cause, okay? And also direct agent-backed interceptions like with Lindsey Graham. No, there's an Israeli term for it, for the helpers. No, not useful idiots, lackeys, or whatever. There is an Israeli term. There's a Hebrew term for it in Israel that the Israeli government points to, where they say they're not Lindsey Graham. I'm talking about Jared Kushner, or like, for example, a great example of this that isn't Jewish is Brett McGurk, right? Because I'm not just like implying that Witkoff and Kushner are Jewish and that's why they are doing this or whatever. Is it Azar? It could be Azad. I don't know. Whatever. It doesn't matter. But there's helpers, there's assets, there's agents, and then there's envoys. Okay? In this circumstance, Donald Trump is surrounded by people who are sympathetic. And so was Joe Biden, but Joe Biden himself was also sympathetic, right? Donald Trump is more malleable. But the helpers were specifically Witkoff and Kushner. The assets were Lindsey Graham, who kept traveling back and forth to Israel and openly told Wall Street Journal that he was getting talking points from Israel to convince Donald Trump. And you got envoys directly communicating with Donald Trump, like Benjamin Netanyahu. And that's how we arrived at this spectacular fuck-up, okay? And Donald Trump did not listen to his own generals, his own intelligence assessments on how things would go when they warned him, and he went through with it regardless. So that's the reason why I say this time it's different, that Israel is in the driver's seat. Israel has been in the driver's seat for our Middle Eastern affairs since Trump won. That was a big shift. That's why Trump did a bunch of things that no previous administration had ever entertained. And this is yet another one of those instances. Because Israel has wanted to, blow up Iran for years, for decades. Iran has been an ever-present threat to Israel, both with the axis of resistance and also with its missile striking capabilities. Donald Trump did it. He took the final plunge. And here we are.
Has been talking with the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, who just a few days ago was taunting Trump on social media, posting, "Sad, but this is what happens when your leaders put others ahead of hardworking and ordinary Americans." But Trump telling me he's toned it down a lot. He's much better. The president then added what sounded like a threat to the man he says he is talking to. "We know where he lives. Let's put it that way."
And President Trump will address the nation tonight in what the White House says is an important update on Iran. This comes as a new Ipsos poll out this week shows 60% of Americans disapprove of U.S. military strikes on Iran, and that nearly two-thirds of Americans want to see the U.S. to work to end the conflict quickly.
And John, as we've been saying just moments ago, the president gave this interview to a British newspaper, already drawing reaction across Europe.
Yeah, this is something else. Asked directly, would you consider withdrawing from NATO? And look at his answer. He says, "Oh, yes, I would say it's beyond reconsideration. I was never swayed by NATO. I always knew they were a paper tiger," and Putin knows that too, by the way.
The reason why Donald Trump uses paper tiger when he's talking about NATO is because everyone else is calling America a paper tiger for understandable reasons, because it is. But it's really funny because NATO is America. So when he calls NATO a paper tiger, he's still calling America a paper tiger, but he's too stupid to recognize that for some reason. In his endless need to shift the blame over to someone else, he ends up, what is this? What? We already read the letter, man. Calm down. Yes. We read it. You're like spamming it. You're like, dude, Pezeshkian dropped something crazy, bro. You got to read it. It's crazy style.
Adriana, good morning to you. Good morning to everybody. Even if the U.S. pulls out of the Iran war in 2 or 3 weeks, that would be longer than President Trump's original timeline. I asked him what else has to happen between now and declaring victory. Trump said, quote, not much. We want to clean up some ends, but we have done our job.
We'll be leaving very soon.
President Trump said the U.S. continues to negotiate with Iran, but will soon be done with the war.
I had one goal. They will have no nuclear weapon. And that goal has been attained. They will not have nuclear weapons. But we're finishing the job. And I think within maybe 2 weeks, maybe a couple of days.
In a phone interview, I asked the president if removing the enriched uranium that remains in Iran, a critical component to make a nuclear weapon, is a requirement to declare victory. Trump said, I don't even think about it. That's so deeply buried, it's going to be hard for anybody. Trump said it's possible Iran will make a deal in the coming weeks, but added that is not necessary for the U.S. to end the war.
They're losing.
I mean, all of these statements are an admission of defeat. Like, nuclear weapon, oh, we don't care about it any longer. Strait of Hormuz, we don't even need to open it. We got all of our goals across. This is a defeat. You know, this is a major, major defeat, right? It's going to have widespread consequences around the world. No regime change took place. They're like, oh, we did regime change. The guys are more pliant. It's bullshit. They're literally way more aggressive. They're hardliners. So I don't know. In the case of Donald Trump, I never know if it's like someone lying to him in his orbit and he's such a fucking moron that he doesn't know that people are lying to him and he's just like repeating what he's heard, or if he's personally come up with this lie to save face. I just don't know, right? But every single reason that he did this, he has dropped at this point. Piece by piece, like this video goes through each individual goal, no matter how silly it was from the start, and openly recognizes that they're lost, right? Claiming that he's won on these, maximalist goals, when the reality is the exact opposite, right?
They admit they're losing. They're begging to make a deal.
Earlier Tuesday, the president said reopening the Strait of Hormuz is up to other nations since they depend on Gulf oil far more than the U.S. I'm not a gatekeeper for them, he said in our interview. Countries have to come in and take care of it.
They'll go right
like
up there.
We're operating like there's no tomorrow, right? We're behaving like there's no day after. This is the same thing that I was considering for Israel, right? Like when Israel was doing this genocide, and openly showing the rest of the world that they're not a force that you can reason with, right? That they're just like this unstoppable force of evil. They were not calculating what the day after would look like. When you unwind international standards, when you destroy the liberal post-World War II consensus, the post-World War II international rule-based order, eventually someone is going to strike back against you in a similar fashion. Here, I'll give you a small example of this, right? Cluster munitions. America and Israel have never signed on to the weapons conventions, barring the usage of cluster munitions, right? They've never done so. And now Iran is using cluster munitions on Israel. So Israel keeps turning around and saying, they're using cluster munitions on us. Like, this is a war crime. And no one gives a shit because you violated the rules from the start. You violated the rules from the start. Of course they're going to use it against you. And no one is going to turn around and be like, wow, I can't believe it. You know, like that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. This is the problem with might makes right politics. It only works if you are the most mighty. Okay. And it certainly doesn't work if there is a country that is invested and has the capabilities of conducting asymmetrical warfare. Iran is that country. That's the problem here. Might makes right only works as long as you are the most mighty. When you are no longer the most mighty, all of a sudden you're in a spectacular position of weakness, far weaker than you actually ever were when you first entered the battle. And no one will come to defend you. These international standards benefited the United States of America because it offered it a liberal patina, a protective cover. America had to make a convincing case that these kinds of interventions that America was engaging in were necessary interventions, albeit very violent interventions, but they were necessary. America was the world police, and they implemented soft power initiatives to prop the hard power up, to justify it to the rest of the world. I warned of this reality. I'd never thought that I would experience this change of attitude happen so rapidly, right? What did I always say? Trump too. From the start, I said, if you diminish soft power, all of a sudden, 800 military bases will look a lot like 800 different military invasions. And no country throughout history has ever been able to exhaust its resources that much and spread that far and wide and continue its military dominance, right? It doesn't work like that. And that's what's going on. And you will see these reverberations. You will feel them slowly but surely in the upcoming years.
And they'll be able to fend for themselves. I think it'll be very safe, actually, but we have nothing to do with them.
Iranian restrictions in the strait have caused gas prices in the U.S. to spike by almost 35% since the war began.
All I have to do is leave Iran, and we'll be doing that very soon, and they'll become tumbling down.
In a new warning, Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps is threatening to attack the Middle East offices of American tech firms tonight if Iranian leadership continues to be targeted by airstrikes. 18 companies were singled out, including Microsoft.
50,000 Cartier glasses. You keep saying America and Trump is losing the war, but you can't even see that the actual war objectives are. The stated war goals were never the actual objectives, but you can't see what they are. What are the actual war objectives, Drake Sinatra? Was it to... Was America's actual war objectives to show the rest of the world its ass? Was that what it was? To just like light billions of dollars of weapon systems, radar installations, and irreplaceable aircraft on fire? They want to blow up Middle East. Oh, okay. Got it. Thank you for your analysis. Oh, I didn't realize that America's goals here was to diminish the confidence that people have in the American military. That is the underpinning of why the dollar is the global reserve currency, while simultaneously destroying the petrodollar's resilience. You know, it's a twofold mission right there. What do you think destroying the Middle East means, chatter? It means no more petrodollar. It means no more SWIFT system. Are you crazy? And also showing that America does not have the capabilities to force project or to defend its allies, defend its security cooperative allies, where there are American military bases, remember, 800 of them around the world. Those military bases are not actually a guarantee that you will be secure. As a matter of fact, it's a guarantee that you will be insecure if there's a country crazy enough to fight back against America. Do you feel like those are, do you feel like that would be the goal of any country? Let alone the United States of America, that has dominated the planet as the hegemonic superpower for our entire lives? Of course not. We are a victim of our own success. If the American government's goal was to maintain its hegemonic status, especially after the dissolution of the USSR, when we were left with no real enemy, right? No other great power, no other world power that could contest our ambitions and fight back, we greatly accelerated our own demise, okay? We did that because we were too successful. We continued accelerating in the financialization of the American economy, which had horrible shocks on the American labor force, on the health of the overall domestic economy. We kept funneling money into endlessly expanding military budgets to the military-industrial complex that was no longer actually developing the most sophisticated weaponry simply because they wanted to dominate the rest of the world, but instead to just make money, right? We've spread far too thin, and we could do so because we picked our targets carefully, okay? We picked our targets carefully. Iraq, Afghanistan, Iraq again, right? Like those were targets that we could dominate militarily, okay? They did not have the capabilities of fighting back. We implemented much more sophisticated messaging operations in the buildup. This time it's different. Even Venezuela, Venezuela is another example of this as well. So this time is different because the country that we finally decided to take on was one that had developed its sovereignty through blood, Iran, and had spent 47 years developing its defenses for this exact moment. And we pushed them to a corner. We killed their leadership, and now they're successfully fighting back and achieving their objectives
breaking news
militarily. And the impact around the world is devastating. We have released Russian sanctions in an effort to make up for the energy crisis that we created when Iran shut off the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is able to farm additional revenue. Iran is able to farm additional revenue through a toll system in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is achieving all of its military goals here, while showing the rest of the world that America does not have the capabilities of defending its allies, and it does not have the capabilities of bringing a country that we have been able to dominate economically through economic warfare by a sanctions regime. We cannot bring them to heel militarily. It's over.
From the United States, and President Donald Trump is saying that Iran has asked for a ceasefire. In a social media post, he said that Washington will consider when Hormuz Strait is open, free and clear. Until then, U.S. forces are blasting Iran into oblivion, or as they say, back to the Stone Ages. Okay, let's bring in our chief U.S. correspondent, Alan Fisher, who joins us from the White House. So, Alan, the question is there anything in this?
Well, I hate to use the phrase time will tell, Nick, but that's exactly what will happen. That's exactly where it's headed. And as I've said many times, this isn't a day-to-day thing. This is an hour-to-hour thing. What is interesting is that Donald Trump has announced that he wants a primetime address on all the main networks, and he will get that at 9 p.m. this evening, so in just about 12 hours' time. There was speculation on Tuesday night that Donald Trump was perhaps going to announce an end to the war. That is unlikely. From people I've been speaking to over the last 12 hours or so, they say it's more likely that he's going to say the war will continue for a couple of weeks. He understands that people are experiencing financial pain. He understands that the cost of gas, the cost of filling up your car, the cost of fuel for your home is much more expensive. But he says this is a short-term pain to get through this, and at the end of it, there will be Iran with no nuclear weapons. Now, the language has changed over the last 4 or 5 days from the administration. We heard it from Pete Hegseth on Tuesday. We're seeing it from Donald Trump in this Truth Social post, where he says that dealing with the new government of Iran, they're less radicalized and far more intelligent. That, of course, sets them up as not being the threat they were when Donald Trump has called the government in Tehran as evil, as monsters, as raving lunatics. This sets them up as people who are more easy to deal with. And although Donald Trump has achieved many of his aims, and there's no doubt about that militarily this has been an overwhelming victory for the United States in that they've destroyed the Iranian Navy, they've diminished the Air Force, they've hit the missile producing factories, they've damaged the drone program as well. All of those have been successful, but of course what he talked about was regime change. And he hasn't been able to deliver that. So now, by dressing it up as this government being less radicalized, far more intelligent, it sets him up to be able to say, well, there is a new regime. There are different people in charge. And there are different people. But there's no indication that the ideology or the approach from Tehran to the United States will be any different under the people who are now in charge.
To Tehran now, to Ali Hashim. So,
at a certain point, you have to consider this, okay? It doesn't really matter if we're deluding our own countrymen by saying, oh, the victory conditions have been met, we're doing great. What matters is what the truth is, right? Like, other countries are seeing the reality, right? And that's eventually, as people come to that recognition that America's capabilities are actually nowhere near what people previously calculated them to be, that's going to change the dynamic of the world, right? Like, it doesn't matter if the stock market is doing well in the United States of America for the time being. It doesn't matter if, Trump says, oh, I won all my objectives here. I did it all. I'm so successful. Like, what matters is the truth. Because at the end of the day, these other countries that are, led by competent leaders, even if they're vassal states ultimately, they see the truth. They recognize what's going on, right? It doesn't even matter how they communicate. It doesn't even matter because, like, you look at 32 days ago, you look at the statements from European leaders 32 days ago and look at how they're talking about the situation now. Okay? Match those statements up. Listen to Merz. Listen to Keir Starmer. Listen to Macron. They were salivating. They were so elated. They were like, oh, finally, we're doing this. I mean, listen, it's great. Fantastic, Mr. President. Thank you for doing this. Now listen to them 32 days after the fact. It's impossible. It's impossible to avoid the truth. When you hear the fear in their voice, their tenure has changed, right?
Ali, President Donald Trump saying Iran has asked for a ceasefire. What's being said there?
Well, according to Iranian officials, they're denying completely this request for a ceasefire. The only thing that comes to mind is President Pezeshkian's call today with the head of the European Council, President of the European Council, where he said, we have the necessary resolve to bring this war to an end while observing its requirements, especially the essential guarantees to prevent the recurrence of aggression. This is the only thing close to what might be an idea of ending the war. But of course, it's not a request of ceasefire, and it emphasizes on the idea of ending the war with guarantees that it's not going to occur once again. So it's completely different from what President Trump has been tweeting or, posting on Truth Social. So Iranian officials are denying this completely. And we heard yesterday the foreign minister, he's the man in charge of the diplomacy in this country, saying that they're not looking for a ceasefire. They want a comprehensive end of this war. And actually,
it's so funny because, like, as critical as I am of Barack Obama, for years I've maintained the position that his signature foreign policy accomplishments were with the JCPOA and the normalization of relations with Cuba, okay? The easing of sanctions on both of these countries. And it's unbelievable that the Democrats, when they were in charge, did not even reverse that position and go back to the Obama administration stance on Iran or with Cuba. What a spectacular failure this was by the Biden administration. Here's Sina Tusi all the way back in May 25th, 2022, talking about the sanctions relief. What did Iran do with the sanctions relief it received under the deal in 2015? According to the Director of Defense Intel, Lieutenant General Stewart, the preponderance of the money Iran received from the JCPOA went to economic development and infrastructure. Opponents of the Iran nuclear deal in Congress choose to avoid the facts and prioritize politics over what's good for U.S. national security and global peace and stability. Diplomacy and engagement delivered results on Iran. Trump's maximum pressure failed on every front. Okay? Like, this was our own military assessment, that they were straight up taking advantage of the sanctions relief to develop their own country. They were not using it in the way that the Trump administration was claiming that they were. Okay? It's so ridiculous, dude. It is so stupid. And honestly, I have smoke for Obama, too, who never actually defended his legacy on this. He loves defending his legacy, and he never turned around and said, hey, remember when I did the Iran nuclear deal and it was awesome? He never defended it. He didn't urge the Biden administration to push for it again. We just left it in the rear view. Why? Because everyone in Congress is a writer for Israel. That's why. If you want the honest truth of it, it's because every single dumbass congressperson, both high-ranking officials in the Democratic Party and every single Republican, is unconditionally pro-Israel. Okay? That is why. That's precisely the reason why. What a crock of shit this is. Obama loves defending his legacy. He loves talking about Medicare for all. And yet, he never talked about his legacy with the Iran deal. Never. Not once. Never defended it. Never urged the Biden administration, who was, his vice president, right, to reconsider the JCPOA. Oh, did I say Medicare for all? Sorry. ACA. Obamacare. That's what I was talking about. Obviously, he didn't do Medicare for all. He's antagonistic to Medicare for all because it questions his legacy. Let's be real.
Analysis here in Iran and observations and officials are saying that they are not in a position to ask for a ceasefire, because this is going to be very harmful for Iran, because it's going to leave this whole conflict in this just flying in the sky in tatters. At any time they might be attacked once again. What they want is, just like Mr. Pezeshkian said, the president Pezeshkian, that they need guarantees so that this is not going to happen again. Also, Abbas Araghchi yesterday in a phone call with the Lebanese speaker, Nabil Berri, said that the end of the war in Iran is going to be in accordance with the end of the war in Lebanon. I mean, it's very complicated to end this way.
Ali, thanks for that. Ali Hashim there in Tehran.
昨天，中共中央政治局委员、外交部长王毅同巴基斯坦副总理兼外长
China and Pakistan launched joint peace initiative to stop the spillover of Middle East.
达尔举行会谈，就海湾和中东地。
Even though you done did me dirty, you're still my number one Shrimaki. Here's what the actual war objectives are, in my opinion. Oh, this guy wasn't memeing. He's like being serious. End energy dominance of the Gulf and world dependence on them. Secure energy dominance over Europe. Fund war chest with for war with China. Eliminate threats to Israeli local hegemony. Dog, do you think we're achieving any of those things? Do you understand that like the refinement capabilities that we have to implement on U.S. soil in order to take advantage of the Venezuelan crude that we have, heavy crude that we have, to make up for the loss of supply from the Gulf is infinitely riskier with no real mechanism to achieve those goals. I've talked about this already, as opposed to just like keeping the GCC stable because they're vassals anyway. You're out of your mind. You're talking about like a 5-year period where what? There's just going to be rolling blackouts in every country with the exception of the United States of America and Canada and Mexico? That's insane. And Russia? No, you're out of your mind. Also, funding the war chest with China, that is the worst aspect of this. Because The Economist and Financial Times are literally behaving like Hasanabi has right now. Okay? I've been talking about this for years, and I never thought in a million years would I see the same commentary that I've been talking about, the same analysis that I'm seeing from like America's endless militarism in reflected in the Financial Times of all places. Remember, we were joking about American Century of Prosperity, J.D. Pondon, right? The Economist literally did a J.D. Pondon do nothing win meme. He's literally believing the theory you had a few weeks ago. Why are you acting like this is insane all of a sudden? Because when I was talking about the theory of like what is the materialist interpretation, what could be a long-standing goal here, I also explained to you that it is unachievable and is going to lead to spectacular defeats regardless, and it's still going to hurt America both in the short term and cause its collapse in the long term, because this has shown that America doesn't have the military capabilities of going against China. I've never shied away from that perspective. Chinese export controls will diminish, if not destroy, American munitions development and procurement capabilities, okay? But you assumed it was what the Americans believe. I don't think America has the capabilities of achieving this. I don't know if this is going to be successful at all. That's why I'm telling the chatter that it's a ridiculously risky endeavor. Trump is now in an impossible bind. If he tries to occupy Karg Island, he will almost certainly have to use U.S. troops, committing to the U.S. fully to a war that will ratchet up gas prices. If Trump chickens out due to Hormuz, it makes America's military might look laughable. I think chickening out or not, this is already unsalvageable. I think if Donald Trump came in and tried to do like a swift tactical operation and was able to seize control over the over Karg Island, and let's say Iran didn't evaporate Karg Island and like laser however many thousands of troops that were deployed on Karg Island, because I think Iran would just straight up nuke Karg Island, just so you guys understand. Like if America somehow takes Karg Island, Iran nukes it. Not with like a real nuke, but you see what I'm saying, right? Like they will take that. They will absolutely blow up that island in order to kill as many American troops as possible. Okay? But look at this. Look at this. Look at The Economist. This is a straight up community meme, dude. This is a community meme, and it's now the newspaper of Western capitalists reflecting on a community meme from our community. Okay? It's just like, I've never seen so much unbelievable vindication in such a short period of time. Like the Gaza equation took 2.5 years and an unlimited bloodshed of children for people to basically come to terms with the reality, to come to our side in the argument, to see what we were talking about, right? The Iran one is even far more accelerated than that. I can't believe it. Adam Tooze was talking about how China can restore, stability around the globe. He was like writing for the Financial Times, talking about a 5-point plan for Chinese dominance. Now, some of it is very silly, obviously, but it's crazy that it took like less than 30 days for many intelligent people to really reconsider how they view China, to really reconsider how they view America's force projection capabilities. Things are happening. This is why I said in the beginning of this conflict, I said, these are the weeks where decades happen, right? We're in it. We've been in it. Yeah. Francis Fukuyama talking about the nuclear doctrine and saying North Korea was right to develop nuclear sovereignty. Like, these are people that have, even down to like the FTD guys or the Atlanticists at these like, right-wing American foreign policy think tanks that have demanded America do exactly what it's doing for years and years, have to conduct sober assessment about how things are going and saying, this is really bad. This is really, really bad. We have to figure out a way to pull out. Like Citrinowicz, right? Like that guy who's another one of these like analysts that's, an Atlanticist. I think he's at like, is he at Rand or something? I don't know. I forget where he's at. But all of these like pro-military intervention guys are now turning around and being like, we have to pull out. We have to pull out. We have to pull out. Okay? That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. It is a moment of pure vindication. And yet, of course, there is, boundless, endless stupidity on the American side. So, of course, there's still going to be people who don't recognize what's going on. And they'll say, oh, you're just wrong, or you're biased. You don't want to see the truth. But it doesn't matter, because the truth is the truth. Okay? Intelligent people in other governments and foreign governments, intelligent people that have their assets, that have their assets in the region, that are experiencing the shocks, are recognizing exactly what's going on, and they're going to reconsider American hegemony. The damage is done, right? I don't think there is any way to turn this around. It's been said before, but it should be said again. This could be the United States of America's Suez moment. Yeah, I do not see a way out of this that creates face saving for America. I don't see it. The moment that Iran was able to control the Strait of Hormuz and stop oil tankers from passing unless they pay a toll in Chinese yuan was the moment where everything changed, okay? And they have not let up. Yes, the Suez Crisis is considered the moment that the British Empire fell, a devastating blow. I think this is worse than that, because I don't think America has the capability of managing imperial decline in the way that the British Empire was able to do so. The British Empire was able to retreat and basically become a vassal state to the continuation of Western imperialism under the hands of America. This time it's different. It's more devastating than that, because there is no continuing Western imperial force. None. This is going to rip apart Western imperialism. That is what I see in our future. And it will be very bad in the short term, but I think it will be very good for global prosperity in the long term. But it's entirely dependent on what America and Israel do next.